Hi, and a warmly welcome to Season 5 of Fail and Grow with me, Wilma. I'm one of the co-founders to vloxq CPQ, perfectly and very smooth integrated to the rest of your ecosystem, creating quality quotes quickly. Fail and Grow is an after-work podcast niched into operational excellence. And what is that? That is everything that smoothens your sales and your operations to ensure that your revenue increases and, of course, the profits and your margins. And today, I'm thrilled to say that I am someone that I quite recently got to know a bit better, Fredrik Land at Invise. And what I admire most about this person is that he's so technical skilled. And in this case about HubSpot, but I'm sure, Fredrik, you are technical skilled about whatever, but and also very helpful. So Fredrik, it's a great pleasure having you as a guest in today's episode of Fail and Grow.
Pleasure being here.
And today we are going to talk about trends within the Nordic regarding digitization. We will see exactly what the topic will be. So jumping straight into today's subject, we had a very short and sweet talk before about this episode, what we're going to niche it into and talk about. And yeah. I'm very curious from your point of view, being the CTO at one of the biggest HubSpot agencies globally, and seeing the trends within digitization. So when I asked you about this, what was the instant thought you had if we look at trends and digitization on the Nordic market?
I mean, it's a really good question, and I know that we spoke beforehand. And as always, I just improvise everything, but at the same time, I probably have it in my head. I would say like the general trend, and that has kind of been going on for a while, but now we can see the effect of it, is that I mean, the digitalization has been going on for a while, and people have been talking about it since, early, 20,001 something. What I can see is that a lot of companies has really, tried to move into a digital area where they just have acquired multiple SaaS services, and they are using one tool for a certain thing and another tool for another thing, whatever. So they are kind of digital, but they don't have anything connected. They don't have any scalable solution at all. And I mean, this problem occurs today as well. That I would say that's one of the biggest hurdles that we work with, is that you want to be, as a customer, you want to quick and easy, get everything up and running, and you kind of forget to build that foundation. And I think we see the result of an unconnected SaaS environment today that we need to sort out, and I'm happy to do it. Of course, that's what drives business for us, but at the same time we still struggle of getting that across, because it's a boring cost when you try to acquire and do this digitalization journey. It's almost like, oh, I want this feature, I want to do this thing, maybe tomorrow I can start sending automated emails, and I'm like, yeah, that's the end goal. But in order to do that in a good way, we need to invest money and time in something as boring as a foundation.
I thought because as a SaaS provider, supplier, as we are at vloxq, I find that the demands from the customers have been much more clear in that they ask, is this integratable to this? Who is responsible for the integration? Will you do it? Will you ensure that it works together? I mean, the demands, it's much more, I don't really know how to say it, but like knowledgeable. It's like they know more today than just 5 or 10 years ago. But the sense that you are talking about is that the customers has bought all these SaaS solutions, and it's tricky for them to get them together. So my question is, who is responsible? Is it us, the SaaS providers and suppliers, or is it the customers that has to ensure that the system actually do work together?
It's once again a good question. I would say that I mean it's both our problems, both as us and the clients, because I also see that there's an increase in knowledge in kind of what you want to attain doing certain stuff. I think that as a SaaS service, I am I'm not working for HubSpot. I'm not obliged to say that they're, glorious and perfect, but I am specialized in that. And of course, there we talk about this 360 view. But at the same time, I mean, HubSpot is selling a system. And if you want to say, like, I just want this part of the system as a sales rep on HubSpot, you're going to say, well, that's good for me because my budget needs that. And the same thing probably goes to other SaaS companies. You want to sell your service, but you leave it to the customer to have that, integration thoughts. And I mean, that is also, we talked about this and connected to that as well. I would say, like, the biggest problem, you mentioned something that it's not 100% I'm not 100%, following you there. I see that there are a lot of companies say, like, we need to integrate, because that word is like inbound marketing was 5 years ago. It's just like, integrate. It's more like, why and how? What do you want to achieve? Because usually they come to us and say, like, we have this ERP. We want to connect it to HubSpot. How much does it cost? It's just like, do you want us to rebuild an ERP platform, or do you just want the first name to be synchronized? Because that is going to be from 5 hours to 2,000 hours spent on that. So I think, like, what is the name? I'm going to say this in Swedish. Kravspec. That is kind of something that we need to educate people in marketing and sales about. IT people know it, but IT people usually get involved too late.
And just to translate, to have a clear blueprint of what do we want to do, what do we want to achieve, because that, I feel, is spot on. They often ask the question, the trending question, is it integrated, or how do we integrate? And our question is always, what do you want to achieve? Or I guess you want to achieve this, or so maybe if we should try to educate the poor listeners to this episode, maybe feel that we are talking about something too simple, that is to ensure that you look into your system, what do you want to achieve with them, and after that with your blueprint of how it should be connected to one another, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also there's, I mean, if you're working as a sales manager or a CMO, whatever, it might feel, a little bit scary to talk about technical requirements, because if I ask you the question, what do you want it to do? They immediately start thinking, well, I don't know the API endpoints. I don't know how to put these kind of requirements. But I would say, if you can just tell me from, like, a human perspective, what you wanted to achieve. It's like, if you can write me a story, well, I work as a sales rep, and when I do this, I want this to happen in the other system. And I also want to see this, whatever. I mean, that helps us tremendously. You don't need to map data, because that's something, I mean, that's the next step. But just say, like, what do I want to achieve as a human, not as an IT person? I mean, that question, just kind of don't make it too dramatic. That helps us tremendously. Yeah,
I agree. Okay, if I were to call that trend number 1, do we have other trends that you see within the Nordic landscape and digitalization that has come on to you, I mean, lately, or the years? Här måste jag klippa bort, jag svamlade.
No, but absolutely. I would say I have 2 more trends in my pocket. So let's, start with one of them. And that would be, I mean, connected to HubSpot, because, I mean, usually when you work with marketing, sales, whatever, or tech, that is, one part of it is more like a methodology, like, how do we work? How do our organization work? But on the other end, and that's where we kind of rely on HubSpot, is like, what kind of platform do I have to help me do those things? And the reason I'm talking about HubSpot today is because I know it. You can probably achieve same things with, I don't know, choose Salesforce or whatever software you prefer. But that we can see a lot more B2C companies are moving into HubSpot as more of a triggering engine, rather than what we call usually as lead nurturing, lead scoring, these long sales cycles. We start seeing e-commerce, we start seeing, I mean, you as a SaaS provider, you might want to have, like, okay, when people purchase our SaaS product, we want to have a guided onboarding. And based on how they actually, behave on that guided onboarding, we want to trigger certain notifications, in-app notifications, or, text messages, whatever, and just, help them where they are. Not saying, wait 2 days and then send this email. If they click, wait 5 more days. Not that. More like immediate. Okay, you haven't been using the Uber app for 10 days, but we know that you usually take this journey. Well, let's give you a notification that you have 20% off. And that kind of stuff never happened 5 years ago, at least with HubSpot. But today we see it like that's the engine. And yeah, a lot more B2C companies are coming into this journey, and it's fun. I like it.
Do you see this applicable also for the B2B selling companies, or the same mindset applicable within B2B, or is that something for the future maybe?
No, but I would say B2B. When I said B2C, I would say B2C more like e-commerce, and for B2B maybe SaaS solutions. If you're, selling a tractor or whatever, we might not see that kind of need to have that instant feedback. We don't have an app that we need to fetch that to. I think that you can probably use some of that functionality. Is it the best fit? Well, maybe not. Maybe it's more of a nurturing strategy that you should use your system for a classic B2B long sales cycles thing. But I mean, ICA is a good example. But that's, another one, to send a text message to a Swedish person, that is a big no-no in general. I mean, we in the Nordics overall, you don't send text messages unless the person has really said, like, I want to receive text messages, because for us, that's very private. In the US, for example, work with a lot of US companies, it's just like bread and butter to send text messages. But if I receive one, I was just like, well, you're in my pocket, and I don't like that. So
that's true. That's true. That is
thing,
interesting how it's that it's that different in the US, because I also feel every time I feel or I receive an SMS, it's like, then you're personal with me. But on the other hand, to text me is the definite easiest way to get in contact with me. So if anyone want to ask me, like, Wilma, how do I reach you? It's like, send a text. So
100%. But that's probably with a human that you're talking to, and that's totally fine from a cultural perspective. I would say, So we see a huge, change there. And I also think, related to both our trends and actually the industry or your company, I would also see, like, if we're looking at HubSpot, people came to us, let's say just 2 years ago, and said, we want a 360 solution. And I said, well, we got a good start using HubSpot. But then they start, saying, like, okay, but we have this really complex quotation situation. And I feel like you also, as much as I tell you that you shouldn't have a scattered kind of tech stack, you also need to show respect of, thinking like, how can I use this system in the best way? And HubSpot won't be able to give you the best quotation tool. You simply won't.
What you ought the customer, what they should ask about, how they should put on demands on suppliers or consultancy firms. Maybe they go hand in hand, or they're totally different, one trend and the customer point of view.
Oh, but it's once again a good question. I would say in general, like, because we team up with a lot of partners. We just happen to be like a full service agency that handles pretty much everything, but except PR. But at the same time, we know that companies might have a lot of other partners when they come to us, which is totally fine. And I think that's more of a problem, or maybe it's both the problem of the requirements set by the company, but also the other partners to actually collaborate. We don't get any traction if you have an SEO agency doing one thing and you have like a content agency doing another thing, and we don't talk and we don't have these joint meetings. That's not going to work out good. So I would say, like, we're not here to steal everybody's job. Well, maybe a little bit, but not all of the jobs. I think like collaboration is key when you're looking at different suppliers, and really get everybody in the same room, because it almost never happens. It's like maybe five customers of ours are actually inviting us to the same room to discuss kind of all the strategies, whether it's support agents or if it's CRM or marketing, but just get everybody in the same room and get aligned. Don't know if that was the answer to your question, but I would say from a partner and relationship point of view, that is very important.
I would say that is a very relevant trend, if you will, to succeed with your tech stack. If you were to say this is where companies typically go wrong, where do they go wrong in the journey of digitization?
I think that I need to go back to the first one. That is the major issue, and that is not understanding kind of the doing things correctly and doing things that you can actually stand even 5 years from now to feel like, okay, we can only, put on new stuff and make it better. But that means, the kind of the initial investment, I would say that it's a matter of budget. It's a matter of, hours spent from their end, from our end. It is a boring number, but I mean, I can see every company that really understands this and really invests in the beginning, they become successful. I mean, every time. It never, they never screw up, which means that they also can be more self-reliant. They don't need to call us for everything that they need to do. It's just like, can you update this button? No, we don't want to do that kind of stuff. You should be able to manage your own stuff. But that also means that you need to put out the structure. And I'm happy to help with that. So yeah, that is the biggest issue, because if you don't do that, that's also as clear. People who try to stress this and feel like, no, we just want to have the bare minimum just to get us started, they always come back 1 or 2 years later. They come back and say, our systems are a shit show, can you help us? And I will say, yes, I can help you, but it's going to be even more expensive now, because we need to also clean up the mess. So that is the kind of, you think that you're doing a wise decision, but you're not. And we are, I have respect for, people don't have all the budget, but at the same time, it will be cost efficient in the end. Absolutely, that to get a good implementation of whatever tool you choose. If it's your SaaS, if it's HubSpot, if it's whatever tool, get that onboarded correctly with an holistic view, and not only that tool. Try to look at it as a landscape, and the bigger company you are, the less control you have over your business. I meet people on really big enterprise companies, and I get shocked that, the way they handle stuff. They can still use spreadsheets. They're a company of like 2,000 employees, and it can be spreadsheets. But once again, I kind of respect
about it.
Because, but at the same time, I kind of understand this. It's easy for me to say, like, just fix it, just do it. But that's a bigger journey, because to get 2,000 people to get accustomed to a new system or new systems, that is harder than getting 5 people doing it. But I would still say, like, more people should start now to do that, to actually investigate how do we create this, once again, scalable software tech stack. Today, HubSpot is consists of 5 different hubs, and they have a really unique purpose, of course. And just quickly, we have the marketing hub that is features for a CMO or for people working in marketing. That can be everything from ads to connecting your social accounts or handling your email sendouts. We have the sales hub, which is more, you use it for, of course, forecasting and looking at your numbers and as a manager to follow up like on activities, and also to automate your processes. And that would be the sales hub. Then we have the service hub, and that is, it's not super new, but it's absolutely contesting the regular, you're used to maybe using Intercom, you're using Zendesk, you're using other ticketing system. But, we're talking about the 360 view. People want to move that into a ticketing system, HubSpot. So, yeah. So these kind of hubs, they are very niched at a certain role in a company. But then you have 2 wildcards, and one wildcard, it's not even a wildcard, but that's a CMS hub, and that's where you build your website. So if you're on WordPress or Drupal or whatever, and you're using HubSpot, that is kind of a brain fart. You should probably just build your website inside HubSpot, because you will have the same functionality. But let's say that we get somebody from ICA that you mentioned, like the big retail or food store. Know that they come from ICA, which means that our customer cases on our website should reflect shopping, malls or whatever, rather than the airline industry. So we can just have a smart website powered by the CRM. Then the final hub, that is called Operations Hub, and that is, my go-to place. When we use these previous hubs, you're always limited to kind of what the UI tells you to use. So let's say that we create a marketing automation flow. We say, if you're a part of the list, high intent customers, send this email. After that, update this property to marketing qualified lead. You can set, all these kind of different things in the workflow. And of course, sometimes you feel like, but shouldn't I be able to trigger something in another system? Or shouldn't I be able to trigger A or B or C, whatever? And Operations Hub actually provides you with the same kind of branching logic, like if they're a part of this list or if they click that, whatever. instead of saying update a property or send an email, you can say trigger this JavaScript. And for people who aren't, maybe that technical, it just means that you can do whatever you want. So the limitations that we had before was just like, connected to the UI. But if I want to, ping like the local post office to send a greeting card to somebody, just an external system, I don't know why, then I can just trigger that script to, when something happened, do that call, and it will just be handled inside the logic of HubSpot, which means, of course, you need a developer to write the script, but how it should be triggered and that kind of stuff can be managed by a non-technical person. And that, of course, that's the most fun. We have other features in Operations Hub as well, but I would say that's the most life-changing for me, because now I can say everything is possible. And I would just like to recap, because I mean we've been talking a lot of not mambo jumbo maybe, but a lot of stuff. But to actually help the listeners to do something good. So I mean I will represent the CTO role here. Of course, you can listen to another podcast with you around other topics. But when you're looking into connecting your tech stack, I mean, just as we said, get out of all the drama. Just tell me, what do you want to achieve, how do you want to do it? Just make it out in a story or words. That's kind of step one. Step number two is that it's always good to have some sort of RFI or RFP, to actually have a spreadsheet to determine and talk internally and say, like, these features, we need to have those features. Because to have that document, it's good for you as a customer, because then you know what you want and you know how to compare different systems. But it also helps us very much to see, like, okay, we see that you want this is a must have and this is a nice to have. And then we can start using our professional skills to say, like, then we need to connect A to B, then we need that, and maybe you haven't even thought about it, but maybe we should connect this as well. So I think that a lot of smaller companies just feel like they usually send me an email and say, like, can you send an example of how an RFI look like? How do we create that? So I see that there's not super much maturity in that area. It's not that complex. Just create a spreadsheet, write down, want to report on amount of first meetings with customers. Very important, check. Do the next one. And if we have that list, I mean, the best ever. That plus the use case, and just describe that, I mean, we're in a golden scenario. That just happened like 10% of the times when I talk to customers. So that's my recommendations for the listeners. Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be more complex than that. No one expects anyone to write it more detailed. It's like you said, from a human perspective, what do we want to achieve? So I think that is a great advice, and hopefully it's usable for a lot of people out there, especially maybe CTOs, similar roles, trying to get some kind of RFP from the rest of organization. Just start with that.
Yeah.
Great.
And I think it will help in the boardroom as well, because if you have, like, this is what we want to achieve, and you start to investigate different solutions to actually do that, instead of getting lost in super cool features. Like, I come from HubSpot and I say, we have this cool feature, you haven't even thought about it. Another company says, we have this feature, and you start comparing, not apples to apples anymore. If you have that, you can say, like, okay, these systems are actually providing what we want to do, which makes it, of course, easier to argue internally to say, like, we actually thought this through. We're just not jumping on a silly trend. This is what we want for our company to grow. I don't think that people understand that the what you choose for solution as as your tech stack will 100% impact your whole business and your company. Sometimes, a board might say, like, no, but this is for marketing people. This is for sales people. It's just like, no, this is going to be like make it or break it in your company, because if you don't do it, you will probably be out of business in 2 years. So I also think, like, we need to understand that this is how we do it. And it's important for the business, not just specific role. Yeah. The reports are the end goal of a whole implementation. You usually say, like, we want to measure this, we want to measure that. But if you don't, have the right data, you still won't be able to trust it. So it's like the end goal is to have good reports. And of course, just as a sales manager or a content producer want to understand what content is really driving business, you probably have KPIs that are really important for the board. So either you get, because everybody can, if we're talking about HubSpot, can get free access to, looking at, you don't need to pay for a board member to access HubSpot. But there's also, you can create recurring sendouts of a specific report on a specific date, which means that it's up to date. So, I mean, I totally agree. We do it in our board meetings as well. We have these KPIs that we're following. It's not the same as anybody else, but we have a locked report that is only visible for the team in the board that we look at. So, I mean, that is just, everybody should do it. And I mean, speaking of reports, that's also good homework. I think that you usually want to report on stuff. And I think the one thing that you can really benefit from is understanding how the reporting tools works. No matter what system you have, we usually get a lot of questions like, oh, but can we report on this? It's just like, if you just look into how the logic works of the reporting system and you get accustomed to that, you can create whatever you want. And I think that people, doesn't matter what role you have, should spend more time and understand how a Y and X axis work. And, just really trying to connect the dots, because, the reports are what you will take actions on. That's where you will take your business decisions based on. So understand how they work.
When you would like to get inspired yourself about trends or technical trends, maybe, where do you look at? Do you follow someone special? Do you read a book? I guess not, but how do you get inspired?
No, I really just get inspired by our customers. I mean, 100%. I don't consume anything that isn't, how can I say, like relevant to my job. I would say the questions that we get there sometimes are so crazy or maybe stupid or super good. As I mentioned at the beginning of this call, maybe that, it's not that I have my file that I can open and say, this is the solution that we're going to give to you. So usually it just comes up, the question that's just like, well, I never thought about that. I never tested that before. And then I, start talking with my developers, my HubSpot specialists, everybody who's involved, and everybody just start thinking. I think that's how we grow. We just take these crazy questions, and I mean, based on that single question, we can look into so much documentation and so much, trial and error and fuck up, of course, but in a sandbox environment, we just try that out. So I would say, like, the inspiration and the urge to be better all the time, that comes 100% from the questions that my customers ask me.
Okay, my name is Mika Rubenovic. I'm from Finland, and my company is Imperial Sales. I'm doing sales coaching, and my question is to you, how do you prepare yourself to a meeting that you have agreed and you will have it in 1 week's time? What do you do before you meet the client?
I'm very well known in this office that I do not prepare for anything, because I feel I should not even attend the meeting if I don't have the answers to the questions. So I rather, if I don't have the answers to the questions, I wouldn't be in my role. That's at least how I look at myself. Like, I should know this beforehand. So I'm not working in, sales processes in that way. So if you were to ask my colleagues, they are very good and drilled and have a really good structure on that. But if you're asking me and you're doing that, I would say, like, the preparation is, of course, understand the expectations. That's like that's the best part of everything. And that doesn't need to be a week in advance. That can be in the actual meeting. Like, what are you hoping to achieve with this meeting? When we leave this, what do you want to understand, or what do you want to know? I think that question is missing a lot of times, and you start talking and you have kind of no end goal, or like, what's the next step? So from my perspective, of course, read about, the company that I'm meeting, read about all the questions that they have, probably an RFI, that we talked about this, that I have some documentation to prepare. But other than that, just, try to understand in the situation, depending on who's there, and ask, like, what do you in your role expect from this?
And maybe the last tricky question would be, what are your main challenges in your business at the moment?
I mean, at the moment, we're impacted like the rest of the world by the economy, of course. I wouldn't say we have very good financials here, which is good. We know that we can grow without, actually growing, so we don't need to lay people off, and I'm super happy about that, to keep my colleagues. But of course, that impacts the whole business, and people are a little bit more reluctant to committing to things. They want to do it more like, let's test this one and let's evaluate over time. So, but I mean, we're not the only ones in these positions. I would say like that is of course something that's happening right now. But you mentioned that it was something, a struggle, or what should I? Can you
business
repeat?
challenge. Your main business challenge at the moment that you are facing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, another challenge that I think that all consultants are also battling is, I mean, what we do is that our salaries are paid because we do work for our customers, which means that we have so much to talk about, you know, ourselves and to actually say like we're providing this service, but we don't, you know, prioritize to do our own homework. I mean, from an Invise perspective, I think that is also something for all consultants. Like, you do a really great job with all the customers, they get so much result. But you know, if somebody were to come to me and say like, should I prioritize our customers or the specific, you know, customer case with this integration that you want me to do, I'm going to say, screw that integration, let's do something good for the customer. And I mean, short term, it works, but it's also, you know, that's a struggle as a business kind of owner, or at least a partner of this company, to get people, you know, to use that spare time that everybody has, because we have a lot of specialists. They're not sitting from, you know, 7 to 4 every day. So how can we use that knowledge in a smart way, even though it's fragmented into little, you know, bits?
LinkedIn is the way to get in contact to you, or do one send an email or text? Maybe that's too personal.
Yeah. No. Everybody who listens to this can send me a text. Absolutely. But also, of course, LinkedIn, and it's Fredrik Land. I mean, CTO at Invise. You should probably find it there. So happy to talk to you and help you sort out your business. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining and sharing your expertise. And always great to meet you, Fredrik. I get so energized and happy afterwards. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you so much. A pleasure being here.